Mark Hale from New York Post headquarters in Midtown Manhattan as we get set to preview Giants-Bills here in Week 6. Game will be played tomorrow afternoon at MetLife Stadium. Buffalo will come in sporting a 4-1 record. Giants are sitting there at 3-2. Joined today by our Giants beat writer, Paul Schwartz. And Paul, let's start with Perry Fewell and kind of this matchup of Buffalo's former interim head coach, who's now the Giants defensive coordinator, going against his old team. You know, what kind of intrigue do you think there is on both sides, and is there an advantage, maybe one side or another?
I would think if there's an advantage, it's the Giants. Perry Fewell was there in Buffalo for 3 years. He was the defensive coordinator. And then his last year when Dick Duran was fired, Perry Fewell took over as the interim head coach, led the Bills to a 3-4 record, was very popular there, especially with their defensive players. Got an interview for the permanent head coaching job, did not get it, and then came to the Giants as defensive coordinator. The Giants players this week told me that Perry, always does a pretty good job of getting them ready for that week's opponent, but he has really, really personalized individual information about the Buffalo offensive guys. I mean, he worked against these guys all the time. In fact, when Perry Fewell was named the interim head coach, the first move he made was to put Trent Edwards, the quarterback, on the bench and put Ryan Fitzpatrick in as his starter. So he said he's always known that Fitzpatrick is a good quarterback, and he's proving that right now. He's one of the better, highly rated quarterbacks in the league. And, so Giants players say that he's giving them tips about Fitzpatrick, really good tips about Fred Jackson, the very good Bills running back. And I think that could really help the Giants because it's really, really pinpoint, minute, fine detail that only a guy who worked with those guys would know.
All right, let's talk about one of Fewell's best defensive players, Paul, and that's Justin Tuck, who's still battling groin and neck issues. And Paul, I mean, what kind of concern is this becoming as far as Tuck's ability to contribute at any point this year?
Well, Justin Tuck will not play this week against the Bills. That means it will be the 4th game out of the first 6 he will miss. From what I'm hearing, the neck is getting better. If it was just the neck this week, he probably could have played. The strained groin is something he re-aggravated last week, and that is really keeping him out right now. And that's actually a good thing because a strained groin will heal. The Giants, Tuck did not play last week. He won't play this week. Nobody plays next week because it's the Giants' bye week, so that will give him, a nice period of time to rest. The neck is the real troublesome and scary thing because neck issues you can't play with. Even if they're just stiff, it can lead to other things, to a herniated disc, to a bulging disc, and then the guy has to be put down for the whole season, and that's a big problem. So there is concern, but I think because the neck seems to be getting a little better, the Giants are very hopeful that Justin Tuck, after the bye, can come back to the October 30th game against the Dolphins. And you know what? Even if he's a little bit off there, I'm not saying you just sit guys because the team is no good, but if he needs another week, you sit him against the Dolphins, and then that hellacious stretch starts November 6th. Patriots, 49ers, Eagles, Saints, Packers. You need everybody there. They need Lawrence Taylor and Carl Banks back on the defense, too, but they certainly need Justin Tuck back. So, they need him ready for the real primetime stuff.
We're talking with Paul Schwartz, our Giants beat writer here, as we preview Giants-Bills. And lastly, for you, Paul, maybe the most interesting aspect of this game is the turnover battle. The Giants, who turned it over 5 times last week in their loss to the Seahawks. Buffalo now comes in with the best plus-minus in the NFL. They've got the most turnovers versus giveaways, most turnovers created versus giveaways in the NFL. So obviously, we know what this matchup is. How do the Giants protect themselves from throwing interceptions, turning the ball over by putting it on the ground, whatever the case may be?
Well, this is if you have a yellow highlighter, you underline it. If you have a red pen, you circle it. If you like asterisks, then you put asterisks around it. This is the absolute #1 key to the game. The Giants cannot turn the ball over because the Bills are so good at it. Now, every week you say you can't go in with turnovers, but this week it's even more so. The Bills are very, very poorly rated against the run, very poorly rated against the pass, which means you can run on them, you can throw on them. But what happens is teams are marching down the field, and then it's a turnover, and that's the end of it. The Bills have returned 3 returns of interceptions for touchdowns this year. That's fueling their points scored, obviously. They're tremendous as far as making turnovers into points. They have 12 interceptions. They have 16 takeaways. That is the #1 issue. If the Giants hold on to the ball and limit their turnovers to 1 or less, they'll win the game.
All right. Good stuff, as always, from Paul Schwartz, our Giants beat writer, talking about Justin Tuck, talking about Perry Fewell, and talking about the need for the Giants to not turn the ball over tomorrow afternoon at MetLife Stadium. You can follow Paul on Twitter at nypost_Schwartz. You can also obviously read Paul and all the rest of our Giants coverage at nypost.com. For the New York Post, I'm Mark Hale.